I'm George, I'm an member of the Democracy Committee. And this would be actually a great opportunity for introducing yourself to the public and people of LSE and tell why you're motivated to work in this role and why you want to be part of the LSESU. And so what we're going to do is that we're first going to come to each candidate and we're going to ask them to come forward and introduce yourself for a minute. And then we'll be asking questions for which we'll be having 3 questions and we'll be having 1 or 2 minutes to answer depending on the question. And if that's okay with everybody, we're going to record this event, post it on social media so that more people can view it as well.
So to start with, we have the candidates who are standing for anti-racism officer come up to the front so you can do their introductions. No problem.
Sure.
Facing the
Oh, no problem. So yeah, so standing here.
Yeah, 1 minute just to introduce yourself first of all.
No problem. So my name is Victor and I'm a second-year law student. And today I'm running for the position of anti-racism officer. I am running for this position because I believe the understanding of LSE, of the LSESU towards the word racism and the many forms it could take in the present-day university campus context needs an upgrading. So the present complaint procedure for racism is a very formal one, a formalistic one, 2 rounds going to a safe person and then submitting a formal complaint. It's going to take 3 working days for you to receive a response. However, I believe more instances of racism today happens on an everyday and implicit basis. For underrepresented groups, of which I'm a member, I identify as a nation student, many instances do not qualify as a formal instance of racism, but even a slight shift in your bodily language, in your use of words, in your facial expression could result in an underprivileged, in a student from an underprivileged group to feel emotionally hurt. So what I'm proposing consists of 2 pillars. 1, to work with cultural societies, there are many under LSESU, to engage with the entire LSE campus community, undergraduate students or postgraduate students alike, for them to introduce their culture, for us to have more great opportunities to meet students from different cultures, different racial groups, talk to them, have a great understanding of their culture and their beliefs, and also to run workshops similar with content ed workshops, but more specifically targeting people who identify as survivors. These are people who have taken a toll on their mental health because of incidences of racism, formally or on an implicit or everyday basis. And I propose these events to run throughout the year instead of just at the start of the academic years in September, October, November. And we do believe that LSESU is capable of doing this because we already have experience of running content workshops towards issues like consent.
Sorry, I think I have to stop you there for time's sake.
Right,
Really sorry about that. And thank you very much, Victor. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah, you are. No problem.
By the way, let me know if I'm pronouncing your name right. Okay, so the first question we have for you is what do you think that you will be able to bring to the LSESU that is not important to that?
All right. I think, so give me 10 seconds to answer.
Can you have 1 minute to answer?
No problem. All right. I think we can bring 2 things. One is a fresh perspective. So I am an international student, also an Asian student, and I come from an underrepresented group here at LSESU. And I believe what I bring is a unique perspective that SU has often lacked. And number 2, what I bring is creativity and new idea, and also new understanding of the word racism as it's presented. So, and as I just explained, my new idea would consist of 2 pillars: cultural exchange, engaging with cultural societies, and workshops, anti-racism workshops akin to content ed workshops, especially targeting those who identify as survivors, people who have mentally been damaged by incidences of racism. And I believe that these ideas are what we critically need for the present moment because of a formalistic and out-of-date understanding of racism here at LSESU. We need these things to engage the entire LSE community, our entire 12,000 students and 3,700 staff members, for us to make a change and make the shift towards a more updated and a more effective understanding of racism and allow time for a division to heal between majority groups and underrepresented and underprivileged groups, to allow time for those who have taken a mental damage to recover from that traumatizing experience.
I'm sorry, let me stop you there again.
No
For
problem.
time's sake, we're trying to give enough time for everybody.
No problem.
Okay, the next one.
So your final question, you've got 2 minutes to answer. According to you, what would a decolonial curriculum look like, and how could this be implemented at LSE?
A decolonial,
Yeah.
decolonized, you mean? Right, okay, I will answer this question. I divide my answer into 2 parts. First, I want to talk about what really is decolonized. So I believe that this word, I do not personally agree with the use of this word in an anti-racism context, because this limits our understanding towards what is racism. We seem to believe that racism is about one group exerting power over another through means of colonization. We seem to say that it's only about those colonized groups, but really it is not. Colonization entails something political power, political occupation, or entails some kind of privilege. But racism is beyond this. Racism is when we have a inadequate understanding of other people's culture and belief and racial backgrounds. Is when we have certain assumptions in our hearts about other groups, and we take these assumptions with us throughout our lives, and sometimes these factually inaccurate assumptions manifest in social settings. I'm not sure if any of you have had these experiences of in a private setting, for example, a small circle of friends, and you're making jokes, you're talking about, you're just randomly and casually chatting, and one of you actually makes a racist joke. I believe that many people have had this experience of hearing someone making a racist joke in a private setting without anybody of that racial group in attendance. So what this shows is lots of this kind of biases, assumptions, faulty assumptions exist in our minds. So what I believe is not in a decolonized curriculum per se, but a curriculum that consults members of different cultural and racial groups, talk to them. And so a part of my workshop initiative will be about members of the faculty, people who are at stake, have the power to determine what the curriculum is like, for them to talk to people coming from different backgrounds, racial backgrounds, or perhaps even cultural backgrounds, all sorts of backgrounds, talk to them. Are they comfortable with the current curriculum setting? So what I believe
bring
is...
your answer to an end.
Okay, right, one word, bridged and communication. That's my answer.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we'd like to call upon the BME student officer candidates.
Just. Would you like to? No.
You can choose. Okay, 1 minute to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Fatima Mahmood. I'm running for BME officer. I'm passionate about improving the student experience and amplifying voices and also lobbying for change. In terms of my experience at the Students' Union during my undergraduate degree, I was heavily involved in the Students' Union by organizing a series of world cafes that were centered at student loneliness. I organized a World Hijab stall that was aimed at looking at gendered Islamophobia and allyship. I was also involved in the decolonizing the curriculum campaign, which was very interesting because it brought about a lot of networks with the library, with other student groups in terms of representation within the reading lists. And I was also involved with the Uyghur Solidarity campaign to raise awareness about ethnic minorities who are facing genocide. This is a very interesting aspect for our student community because we presented a lot of information on political campaigns that can be turned into social and political ideas for change within the Students' Union. So how long do I have left?
You still have some.
So in my final year, I was a student network assistant for the BAME Ambassadors Network that allowed me to look at the way that it was run, but also the term BAME. So we connected with a lot of academics on the terminology that we used, also the concept of safe spaces. I conducted meetings and presented information for the students that could be turned into political campaigns. For example, I was involved in setting up the Palestine Society at my university. At LSE, I would ensure to amplify the voices of the BME students. I believe heavily in amplifying voices and also the personal experience.
You conclude in that.
And yeah, and lobbying for change at LSE. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that. So the question we have for you is that explain how your lived experience makes you the best candidate for this role.
Yeah, so in terms of my personal identity, there's a lot of layers. I'm British, Muslim, Pakistani woman. There's a lot of layers for that. There's the whole idea of like misogyny, patriarchy, but also the gendered Islamophobia that I faced. And I studied international politics, so a lot of my identity is heavily tied with what I've learned in my undergraduate degree. And as a human rights and politics student, I think having your personal experience at the forefront of your analysis of the way you think and the way you enact change is extremely important. And as for me, I understand that my hijab is a physical representation of who I am, and I intend to bring that in every room that I'm in terms of showcasing change, sharing knowledge, standing in solidarity with the oppressed groups. Yeah, it doesn't matter where you're from. I think there's always that interconnected nature and a lot of common similarities that we have that we can share in terms of creating political and social campaigns. And at LSE, that's very important. And that's what the Students' Union stands for, which is standing up for the students. And that's why I chose to stand for the BME officer.
Thank you very much, Fatima. I say pronouncing back.
Yeah.
So according to you, what are the institutional barriers that BME students currently face?
Yeah.
Your 1 minute.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind is immediately cost of living crisis and how it has disproportionately impacted students. Also, for me, like in terms of my identity, Islamophobia, but also the kind of the judgment that's made when it comes to BME students based on where they're from. This might be the location, the area that they're from, but also different factors that may contribute to a prejudice statement being made that it's in terms of their background, in terms of what they look like. So could you repeat the question again?
Yeah, according to you, what are the institutional barriers that BME students face?
Also, the attainment gap, which is something that I've heavily worked on. Students being judged based on the way that they speak and the way that they write, which is a very key discussion that's been taking place around universities. The officers are constantly talking about the attainment gaps between Y and BME students in terms of achieving like a first class, or a 2-1. Yeah. Thank you.
And your last question, which you've got 2 minutes to answer. How do you, in recent years, the LSE has increased diversity in its student body, but diversity is not justice. Can you share your views on this statement and explain how you'd ensure that diversity does lead to justice?
Yeah, immediately the term diversity is a very interesting one. It's something that I've grappled with a lot of over the years. I think Riz Ahmed, who's a British Pakistani actor, kind of talked about how diversity isn't the end goal. You need to have representation. He linked it to an idea of a burger-sized meal where the representation is the entire meal. But also, I think for me, I have a lot of issues with the term diversity because essentially you're tokenizing certain individuals of certain populations, and I think that's where the idea of representation comes in, but also amplifying and uplifting lived experiences. For me personally, I'm a British Muslim. I'm a British Muslim woman, but we're not a monolith. There's a lot of different lived experiences, and I think that's something that's very important to amplify. You can't expect a certain BME person to be a representative of their community. And sorry, what was the latter part of the question?
How would you ensure that diversity leads to justice in the LSE?
I think when it comes to justice, immediately what comes to mind is the decolonizing the curriculum. Over the last couple of years, decolonizing can be seen as a buzzword in a lot of academic institutions, and I think it's important to grapple with a lot of experiences of students in terms of what they face in their courses, This can be done by making use of the networks that are already within the university, so such as the academic reps, as well as the department reps, and also different societies, religious societies, cultural societies as well, and listening to them and the changes that they want to enact on campus. For example, I know there's like Hands Off LSE, there's the movement to make universities apartheid free, and that leads on to this latter part of my answer, which relates to connecting with community groups around London. There's fantastic grassroots community groups that are doing amazing work when it comes to decolonization, racial justice, standing up for one's rights, standing up for like the rights of immigrants. And I think it's important to also have that community connection. LSE is a global university, but well situated in a very vibrant city. So it's important to reach out and create those community connections as well. And I think justice comes through solidarity. The work isn't on the BME people who identifies BME to do on their own. It's something that requires collaboration and a process of unlearning and a process of understanding differences.
Sorry.
Yeah, and it's all about lobbying for change at LSE and creating the representative, inclusive environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. So since the questions are going to answer why I am doing this, I would just take this introduction quite seriously and introduce myself from the scratch. So I'm doing my postgrad here in social and cultural psychology, and I'm already a practicing psychologist and a DMT practitioner, not the drug, dance movement therapy. So the reason why in my manifesto, I've written that I want to create a safe space because I have been on both the sides, and I'm very passionate about creating safe space because I know how it feels when you do not have a safe space to go to, especially apart from your home. And when you come to a new country, and especially when you're from a particular background, it feels quite daunting. And for people like me who've been abroad, like this is my first ever time, it feels there is a lot of inhibition. I don't feel included in sometimes, and I want to be the voice of those students who are actually coming abroad for the first time, coming to LSE to a completely new academic background. They have no go-to person to ask, because then there are so many people who just say that been there, done that, and there is no safe space for you to just share and open yourself, completely be vulnerable that, okay, fine, I don't know, I just got into LSE, but I need my way, I need somebody to guide me. So that is what I meant by creating a safe space. And yeah, that's my introduction. I think so.
Thank you very much for that. So we're going to be asking you the same questions as we asked.
Okay,
So yeah, explain explain how your lived experiences makes you the best candidate for this position and your one this.
Yes, so the whole idea of becoming a BME officer is to just focus on how racism can affect your mental health, because it gets onto you, you don't feel included. And that is the reason why I am a particular, a best candidate for this position, is because I know how much mental health is important. I cannot emphasize more on that. I know how, even it's been like 1.5 months here, I know what I've been through. And there are many students in my class who are going through the same thing, but are not able to voice it out. That is the reason why my lived experiences, or not just the 1 month lived experience, but the experiences which I've had over the years, have shaped me to be that warm go-to person, that inclusive person where you can be vulnerable and come and share that, okay, I can't figure my way out through LSE, though I got into it. And it is okay. Like, I want to be that person for the people who come and share, and I want to be the voice of the BME candidates so that they don't feel that just because they're in a completely new environment, they do not have the right to feel anything and they have to be perfect at all time and just be as everybody else is here. They can stand out in their own way, and it is okay for them to be the way they are.
Thank you. And according to you, what are the institutional barriers that BME students face?
I think that, I don't know if it's because of me or I have not observed a very extensive mental health support here. Of course, we have you have something in front of you and you have something which is constantly in front of you. There are two different things. So I don't think so there is extensive mental health support. And in today's world, talk therapy is not the only therapy provided. There are a zillion different therapies which students might need. There can be safe spaces so that there can be telephonic things. We can have telephonic services so that students can share. And that's the institutional barrier which they're facing, because we are a diverse college, yes, but it's an implicit diversity. You see diversity here, but do you feel included? Like, it's not an exclusive diversity, which I feel, because I personally, I'm a very confident person, but I'm still hesitating here in front of new faces because it feels like I don't feel included. So and it's not just me talking, I'm talking from, at least I talked to 10 people before coming here, and they had the same view, and that's why I thought that let's use this platform to say that. And that's, I think, an institutional barrier, because what is the intention? Is it just to get in diverse people from all over the world in a room, or actually making them feel included? And that's what diversity should be about, not just accumulating people from all over the world in a college, but also to have that kind of inclusivity, so that even if I want to talk to him one day and just ask him a question, I wouldn't feel hesitated just because of our differences. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Thank you. So in recent years, LSE has increased diversity in the student body, but diversity is not justice. Could you share your views on this statement and explain how you'd ensure that diversity does lead to justice?
I heard that question when you asked it as well, and I don't know about justice, but I think it's actually getting, a lot of people are facing a lot of mental health issues because of being from the BME, and because of coming to a new environment. There is nobody to walk you through. Yes, there are so many events, but they overwhelm students so much, because then we don't know where to go, what to do, and everything. So I think justice is a process. You cannot do anything in one day. Everything is a process, right? So I believe that if we just start making more inclusive events, or maybe more focusing on mental health of the students here, because I think that is what is maximum damage is happening on that front. Otherwise, and that's how we can eventually achieve justice. I don't know the right answer for this question, honestly.
That is the right answer.
Okay. Is that it?
Thank you very much.
Next, can we have the environment and ethics?
Do you want?
Okay, no problem, sorry.
Next, can we have the environment and ethics officer, please? Thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself for a minute?
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm a third year undergrad here studying geography and economics. And I'm running for the environment and ethics officer because I think there's a real problem at LSE about holding leadership to account, and that we pay our tuition fees to LSE, but where do they go? So one thing I'm really keen to focus on is divestment. So currently LSE is still investing in fossil fuels and in arms companies, which I'm sure a lot of the students would have many ethical objections to. I also think it's really important that we unite students in the face of environmental issues to ensure that there's no greenwashing on campus. And also, we have so many great student initiatives here, and I think it's really important that we bring them all together to facilitate really meaningful change both on campus and off campus. And as a student of geography, much of my studies are related to the environment, environmental social science, and environmental justice. So I really want to apply what I've kind of learned in the classroom to the real world and to LSE.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. So would you like to tell why you are the best candidate and why students would choose for you? And you have a 1 minute to answer this.
Sure. So long story short, throughout my teenage years, I was really involved with lots of student politics and student activism. I was a member of the youth parliament, so I campaigned in that instance for greater financial literacy. My campaign got taken to the House of Commons and discussed, and was part of a nationwide policy document. I've bbeen part of the British Youth Council's Young Leaders Collective on Climate Change Initiative. So I've got quite a lot of experience in kind of the challenges of dealing with campaigning and barriers such as bureaucracy. Also at the LSE, I've been a student rep and a society president, so I have a really good working knowledge of how the LSE works and how the LSESU works, and some of the barriers to change we face at LSE as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And what ways do you think social sciences contribute for sustainable development?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I think that sustainability and sustainable development they've become buzzwords that are kind of thrown around, that people just like stick a label on something, they're like, yay, sustainable. Whereas I think the social sciences allow us to look a bit deeper, and I think it's really important that we integrate the social and physical side. So the physical sciences are telling us that climate change and environmental degradation are an undeniable truth, but it requires the social sciences to understand how they're interconnected with notions of justice, of inequality, and how we can really understand that the root causes of the environmental problems are also linked to many of the social problems we have as well. So I'm hoping my social science background can kind of help me cut through the narratives to look at the real picture, and especially to combat greenwashing, and really hold LSE leadership to accountable with this.
Thank you. So your last question, which you've got 2 minutes to answer. How would you support LSE's strategic approach of seeking to influence the global sustainability debate and reaffirming the contribution of social sciences to these debates through research?
Well, yes. So one of my my key manifesto points is that I really want to promote engagement with environmental research, careers, and activism. I'd like to host a series of workshops with people from all of these different elements, and also involve the LSE Environment Department and the Grafton Research Institute here as well, alongside LSE Sustainability. I think it's a tough one here because I think there's a lot of time people work in sustainability and it will kind of be a slightly tokenistic job or a box ticking exercise, and that's something I'm really keen not to do. So I'd really like to kind of open up conversations that are more meaningful about notions of environmental justice and climate change on campus, so we can debate around media narratives, what's going on at LSE, and how we can better understand the world around us by using expert knowledge, so we can unite in the face of this challenge we face.
Thank you very much.
Next, can I call it one of the guys running for that?
Oh, another environment and ethics.
Oh, do we know? Sorry, I'm really sorry. Yeah, you want me to introduce yourself?
So my name is Pragyan. I'm from Nepal, and I did my master's in international relations around 3 years ago. Worked in the public health sector during the COVID-19 pandemic for about 2 years. And now I'm doing my master's in global health policy here at LSE. And during those 2 years, I also had the opportunity to work in urban farming and rooftop farming, and also promoting traditional medicines. And I have had the opportunity to do a bit of research on environmental law while doing my studies in international law and disaster law during my first master's. And I wrote papers about supporting small-scale farming rather than industrial farming. So that's something I would work for, saving the soil, saving Earth. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. So why do you think you're the best candidate, and why should students vote for you? You 1 minute to answer this.
Why do I think I'm the best? So I like the environment. I really love it. And I've had the opportunity, as I said, to study the law aspects of it and how we can, I guess, promote or change those laws so that we actually support the environment. And with my opportunity in urban farming and rooftop farming, what I want to do is spread the message. What was the question again?
Why should students work for you and why are you the best?
Oh yeah, I've had some experience, love the environment, and I want to promote it in such a way, use the media, I guess, use LSE as a platform to make our voices heard to the larger audience. And I guess we have some kind of power in making the world listen. So I also have some experience in the media aspects. I have a YouTube channel and I edit stuff, I make videos. So I want to make a group, a new group, which in that sense, in it, the unity and diversity aspect also comes in. Gather everybody and make people cooperate, not compete, because I went through the groups, the societies and the LSESU webpage, and there were lots of nationalities, but I didn't find a group that considered all the nationalities. So I want to make a group like a society of societies, which will appreciate art, culture, everything from everywhere, cooperate rather than compete. And as you can see, competition is what leads to destruction from all these wars and conflicts that you've seen.
So yeah, thank you very much for that. In what ways do you see social sciences contributing to sustainable development?
For the social sciences, the social aspects of things do contribute to the environment. How do they contribute? Well, they bring in things about saving the land, I guess. And one part of it is environmental law. They actually just look into mostly transboundary effects of disasters and environmental pollution, but they don't look into the larger picture. So they do somewhat contribute, but I say they can contribute a bit more. So we need to do that research. We need to have discussions, make our voices heard again. And yes.
Thank you. So your last question, you've got 2 minutes for. How would you support LSE's strategic approach of seeking to influence the global sustainability debate and reaffirming the contribution of social sciences have to these debates through research?
Yes, and again, going back to the point, make a community with you, actual unity in the community, right? And show that it's better to cooperate than compete. Do research on it, write some papers, get that published, and make our voices heard. Make some attractive content because media has the power to gather people. So I would use LSE as a platform, and LSE, as you already know, writes a lot of research papers. So more research, but also the media aspect, so that people who like to study and read will read, but people who like to watch and listen will watch and listen. Yeah, do I have more time?
Yeah, you've got about a minute more if you want to.
Yeah, so LSE is a big platform. We should all use it. We should all think about the bigger aspects that environmental sustainability is not just about cleaning the beaches or gathering trash from everywhere. It's about preventing the causes that actually pollute our environment. So and I'm also a health policy leader now, I guess. So let's prevent it rather than saving it after the destruction has happened. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's time for that president. So before we move on, can I know how many people are here for that president role? Okay, fantastic. So would one of you like to come first?
I would do.
Thank you very much for volunteering to come first.
Let's do this.
Would you like to introduce yourself and your company?
Of course. Well, hello everybody. My name is Elizabeth. I am doing my postgraduate in human rights and human rights law here at LSE. I've just completed my bachelor's at King's College University doing European Studies for French. And I've been, well, a UNICEF representative, a student ambassador at King's College University for 4 years. This is why at this point I am running for presidency in this position.
Okay, thank you for that. So according to you, what are the main qualities of a good RAG president?
I would say definitely again, with my experience, I've learned that of course leadership is very, very important. But I would say being a good mediator when it comes to volunteering, or at least for supporting students who are students who want to be in volunteering, be giving them a safe space to be not only passionate but creative in volunteering and charity work. So I would say definitely a mediator and of course leadership, but giving them the voice in an organization.
Thank you. In what ways do you see I'm sorry about that. That was a mix up. In what ways do you think that the rising cost of living will affect the fundraising on campus?
Of course, it will affect. But if we are able, as my colleague has said, to use social media and of course, even a different collaborative work with King's College University, which is also something that I've envisioned, would give us a way to creatively find ways to deal with this problem. But do I have an answer for this at this point? No, because it is a dynamic environment that we live at this point, and perhaps again with creativity we'll be able to tackle as we have with King's College and the NCU there student union.
So your last question, which you've got 2 minutes for if you need it, and you sort of already covered it, but what strategies would you put in place to address the impact that the cost of living crisis will have on fundraising?
With fundraising, would it be possible to once again look at the first part of the question?
Yeah. What strategies would you put in place to address the impacts that the cost of living crisis will have on fundraising?
On fundraising. All right, I would definitely say the cross collaboration which I envision with King's College University. I would definitely say creativity is the basis of what we need to do. And I would say also social media, social awareness would definitely be able to tackle the problem.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank
Sure. So good evening. My name is James. I'm a second year undergraduate in mathematics and economics, and I'm the current acting RAG president at the moment. I've taken over the role since May 2022, and since then I've really achieved a significant amount. I spearheaded the RAG week in September, which was open to all first years, freshers, postgrads, in which we raised around about £30,000 for RAG. Currently, I'm leading the charity partnership applications. So we currently have 9 applications, 9 candidates who are running to be our local, national, and international candidate charity partner for the year. So right now, I'm just organising that. I've built great rapport with the SU, with the AU, sabbatical officers, and also many societies. And there's 4 main manifesto pledges which I'm looking to put in place this year. So the first one is a RAG tag. So I've been in conversation with the Sustainable Future Society. And one thing we're looking to do is opening a permanent charity vintage shop in the old Santander Bank. All proceeds from that will go towards RAG charity partners, and it's got a huge positive feedback from students. So we're hoping to open that really soon. The second initiative that I'm hoping to do is run a student fashion show. So this will be an LSE-wide student event. We're hoping to have every society, sports club, anyone who wants to walk the catwalk and fundraise for charity. The third initiative I'm looking to do is an LSE Eurovision night. So obviously, as Eurovision is going to be hosted in the UK for the first time in what seems forever next year, we're hoping to do an all-out event in March time. And my last pledge is to make LSE RAG more streamlined. There's too much bureaucracy at the moment in RAG. There's too many sort of hoops and red tape. I'm trying to make fundraising as easy as possible at LSE and making sure that students and communities can fundraise in any way that they can.
Thank you very much for that. And according to you, what are the main qualities of a good RAG president?
I think chucking yourself in the deep end. I think being as involved as possible. So for instance, with the RAG band, I did 6 days straight of clubbing in some sense. I was out every night scanning tickets, checking in students to the event. So very tired by the end of it, but definitely sort of being that role model and leading the team. And I think that it goes beyond just, being a leader. It's sort of making sure that there's consensus in the team, making sure that we're all on the same page. At the end of the day, we're one big community. I don't want to make decisions on my own which aren't supported by my team. So having the support of my RAG team is very important to me.
Thank you. In what ways do you think that the rising cost of living crisis will affect the fundraising on campus?
I think obviously, in previous years, we have raised significant amounts. Maybe this year will be a somewhat anomaly with the cost of living crisis. But I really think it's targeting the communities which are going to be affected most by the cost of living crisis. So 2 years ago, we had a partnership with the Felix project, which is a food bank in London. And they were our charity partner for the year. So we've got currently charity partners who want to pair with us for 2022-2023. So, giving exposure to them as a charity, if they don't necessarily are a charity partner, but giving students opportunities to get involved in dealing with them. But I really think it's about raising awareness. There's a student hardship fund with the SU, which I'm hoping to promote for those that are really struggling through this crisis. And there's also a rent guarantor scheme which hasn't been used since 2019. So really sort of raising awareness and making sure that students have access to this information where possible if they are struggling.
And your last question, which you've got 2 minutes or if you need it. What are the strategies that you would put in place to address the impact that the cost of living crisis will have on fundraising?
So yeah, as I mentioned, obviously, we're maybe not expecting it to be a massive fundraising year for RAG. Obviously, I hope it is, but we don't know the way things are going with the cost of living crisis. So I think building a legacy of fundraising at LSE, I think even if people potentially, we don't raise the biggest target this year, which I hope we will, leaving people or instilling with them this idea that they can fundraise and throughout their life. So I'm meeting with a society tomorrow called LSE One for the World. It's a great initiative, and it's a pledge whereby students at LSE will make pledge to donate 1% of their earnings for the rest of their life to charity. So even past this cost of living crisis, because it is going to be temporary, we are going to see an end to this. Hopefully moving past that in the future, their fundraising habits and their general sense of charity and community will continue for the rest of their life.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Finally, now we are coming to the women's officer. Would one of you like to come forward?
Yeah, I can do it.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Tito and I'm a third year social policy and politics student. So I'm running for the role of women's officer because my whole life I've been so passionate and so interested in gender studies. And when I came to LSE, I was kind of like, oh yay, I'm in LSE. But I immediately noticed that there wasn't really any publicization of women's issues, especially if we consider intersectionality. There wasn't any publicization of women of colours issues or trans women or queer women and their everyday struggles. I kind of felt as though something that's missing at LSE is accessibility to information. I feel as though there's actually a lot of resources and a lot of things that a lot of people don't know about. It kind of flies under the radar. And that's why in my manifesto, my 2 key points are accessibility and intersectionality. I believe that women's officers should have an online platform or an online forum where everyone, whether you identify as she, her, they, them, should be able to go and discuss everyday issues that affect us. I know that there's LSE Stress, there's LSE Dealing with Loss. They have these platforms, but there's none for women and women's issues in particular. I really believe as well that intersectionality needs to be considered, because when I met the president of Intersectional Feminist Society, or Women in Law, or Women in Politics Society, a lot of them were often white, or a lot of them were from middle-class backgrounds, or a lot of them were straight. I just felt like that's not accurate to the average everyday women. So that's why I'm running for women's officer.
Thank you so much. Why do you think that students should vote for you, and why do you think you're the best candidate?
So I think that I'm the best candidate to be women's officer because I believe that I'm a leader that leads not just from facts or from yes and no information and statistics, but also from everyday lived experience. And I feel like that's really important. I don't think that we can talk about diversity and representation if the person that's leading it isn't diverse or representing anyone. We talk about, the 93% society, but there's barely anyone who's actually from the 93% in power in LSE. It's way too small. And I think that it's hypocritical of us to say that we're all about being liberal and progressive and understanding the meaning of things if we're not getting real people with real struggles to do this. I think I'm the best for this role as well because in my manifesto, I focus a lot on it being a together effort and a group effort. I don't think that it's just about me being in charge. I think that it should be very united as a group effort. And me and Non just spoke before, and we said that we both loved each other's manifestos and we'd love to work together. And I think that someone can't say that they represent women if they're not representing all women. So that's why I think I'm best.
Thank you. And what are your thoughts on LSE not signing the no NDAs pledge? And what actions would you take on this?
I think that LSE has a history of being complicit when it comes to harassment and sexual assault and sexual abuse. And I think that a really powerful weapon against women and our progress is the silence around sexual abuse. LSE, it brags about consent ed, but I've done the consent ed training and it uses the T video. I don't know if you guys have seen the T video, but it's a horrible metaphor for consent. And I think that needs to go. And that's something I would push for. I also think that it doesn't surprise me, honestly. It doesn't surprise me at all. I think that we need to band together in online forums and in platforms and safe spaces. And we need to petition the university. And that's one of my pledges on my manifesto, is that students will now be able to petition online and in person. We could have ballot boxes, we could have an Instagram page, we could have a Google survey where people can send in suggestions and ideas against things like this.
And your last question, you've got 2 minutes to answer. In what ways would you create a more inclusive environment for people who identify as women but face different and often overlapping forms of exclusion and oppression?
I think that's such a good question. And that's pretty much the key focus of my manifesto, is that being a woman is not just being she, her. It's so much more complicated than that. And I don't think that the struggles of having an overlapping identity are being considered enough by the LSE. So one of my pledges is to make Intersectional International Women's Day the biggest celebration of womanhood that LSE's ever had. Last year, I met Sybil, who was the previous women's officer, and I worked with her. And it was amazing, it was great. We organised a talk, we organised Q&As, we organised workshops, but it still felt like LSE has a very narrow idea of what a woman is. And I still felt like people who are trans women or queer women, they didn't feel like they could come. They didn't feel like there was anything that really spoke for them. And so I feel that this year we need to completely be rid of gatekeeping womanhood into she, her, or into cisgendered or into white women. And we need to make it something that anyone feels that they can have a voice and a platform in. I'm proposing a week long of different events. So events involving queer women and queer women speakers, trans women and trans women's issues. I'm also proposing that on my online platform, we would have a place where specific groups of women, for example, Black and ethnic minority women or members of the LGBTQ plus community can come and discuss their particular struggles that they have that other people can't relate to.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would you like to introduce yourself? You know, 1 minute.
Hi, my name's Non and I'm studying gender, peace and security as a master's here. I focus my manifesto mainly on kind of safety measures and things like that for anyone who identifies as female, and honestly it kind of extends beyond that as well, just because I think especially in terms of sexual harassment and spiking and things like that, I think that's become, well, spiking definitely has become a lot more prevalent within the last few years, especially during my university experience. And I think that having lids on cups during AU nights and just generally in any kind of drinking space at university would be a great idea, and that could hopefully reduce the kind of spiking incidents. I also think during in halls and in societies there should be definitely someone who has disclosure training, because at the moment I think there's only one person at LSE who has any kind of training in terms of harassment and sexual violence and things like that. And there should be a lot more people anyone who's experienced anything within that realm should be able to go to, who actually knows how to deal with it and who understands kind of intersectional identities that can that definitely kind of need to be considered in terms of like reporting sexual harassment and anything like that, because it's so prevalent in society. And I think that LSE especially needs to go further with what they're doing at the moment. And I think that these are a couple of ways that they can.
Thank you very much for that. Why should students vote for you, and why do you think you're the best candidate for this position?
I think that students should vote for me because I feel that I'm very much I'm one of those people where it's kind of, if I say that I want to do something and I will do it, then I'm very much pushing for it. So these kind of lids with the cups and everything, absolutely, like, it needs to be done as soon as possible, because it's just harmful at this point, the spiking incidents and everything, and no one should have to worry about going on a night out or going for a drink with their friends and having to think or like rethink going out just because they feel that they're kind of in a position of harm. And I also think that, yeah, it's just wonderful as it stands.
Thank you. What are your thoughts on LSE not signing the no NDAs pledge, and what actions would you take if elected?
Before running for this position, I spoke to Tilly, the General Secretary, about the NDA situation and about like how we can lobby for change and everything, and especially in terms of, you know, we've got, as you mentioned, we've got consent and everything, but if LSE themselves are then turning around and have NDAs kind of lined up ready for people, it really goes against kind of what they're standing for in a sense, just because it's like people shouldn't feel that if they then report an incident of sexual violence that they're going to be kind of silenced. And I think that we need to lobby against that policy, certainly, and also put more kind of disclosure training in place to go to help out with that kind of thing. And I also think that if we have a suggestions box as well for how people feel that we can improve, and in terms of women's rights and of how to deal with kind of situations like the MDA's situation, to kind of combat it, and so that we can actually hear other people's voices and how they think that we can make a difference.
And your last question, which you've got 2 minutes for, in what ways would you create a more inclusive environment for people who identify as women but face different and often overlapping forms of exclusion and oppression?
I would say that in terms of any kind of training that I've mentioned already, definitely including the barriers that, for example, trans women face, and anyone who just, there are additional barriers to any kind of reporting of incidents of sexual violence and assault. And so including kind of intersectional identities into kind of training, or just generally educating kind of the LSE body on issues, I think absolutely need to be addressed and should be central to everything that we do.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have about half an hour, and this is the time for audience to ask your questions to any of the candidates over here. And if you feel that we haven't covered any questions, please do feel free to ask them now. Does anyone have a question? Okay.
In that case, if any of the candidates want to ask their fellow candidates questions, you are also welcome to do that.
Come on, guys. Let's make it a bit more competitive. Okay, then. Okay, considering that no one has any questions, thank you very much for everyone, for coming here. We really appreciate you for taking the initiative to stand in this position. It's very important what you do. And thanks to the public as well to come and listen to them and taking an informed decision as to who you're going to vote for. Thank you.